You ever think about how we actually build a good society? Does it start with some grand plan or massive new laws? Or could it start with something way, way smaller, like something as simple as two little words? Let's dive into this because it turns out a tiny, everyday practice might just hold the key to a much better world. So, the author of our source material tells this great story about his youngest kid. She's about 18 months old. And one of the things she says most is, "I'm sorry." She just picked it up from her older brother and sister. Anytime she gets the feeling her parents are even a little upset, she'll just toddle over, grab their hands, and say it. Now, obviously, a toddler is mostly just copying what she hears, right? But the point here is that this is something so much deeper. It's the very beginning of the habit of consideration. It's that first lesson in realizing, hey, what I do affects other people. And you know that old saying, what you learn at 3, you keep till 80? Well, this is it. This is where that foundation for a respectful life really gets built. Okay, to really get why a simple apology is such a big deal, we gotta pull back a bit and look at the philosophy behind how we relate to each other. This is where that kid's "I'm sorry" connects to a really profound idea about human connection. A philosopher named Martin Buber gave us this incredible framework to think about this. He basically said that every single one of our interactions with others falls into one of two very different buckets. And trust me, this simple difference changes everything. So here's Martin Buber's idea, and it's so clear. On one side, you've got the I-thou relationship. This is when you see another person as a whole, complete, equal human being. Someone with their own feelings, their own world. It's all about mutual respect. But then you've got the other side, I-it. And this is when you treat a person like an it, an object, a tool you can use to get something you want. It really all boils down to one question. In this moment, are you relating to a thou, or are you just using an it? And here's the thing. These individual choices we make to see someone as a thou or an it, they don't just disappear into thin air. Nope. They add up, they build on each other, and eventually they create the entire personality of the society we live in. And that society, in turn, shapes us. It becomes this really powerful feedback loop. The theologian Reinhold Niebuhr absolutely nailed this dynamic. He pointed out that a person's individual morality is totally intertwined with the morality of their society. It's a two-way street, We shape our society, but then our society turns around and shapes us right back. And if that street starts heading in the wrong direction, it can become a really vicious cycle. So how does a cycle like that actually work? Well, it starts small, with individual I-it's moments. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Someone talks down to a cashier. If enough people do that, it just becomes normal. The whole society starts to feel a bit rougher, a bit more inconsiderate. And then kids growing up in that environment learn that this is just how the world works. And boom, the cycle continues, getting stronger and stronger. Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak. How do you break out of something like that? Well, the source gives us a fascinating real-world example of a culture that has managed to build the exact opposite, a virtuous cycle of consideration. The author talks about his experience in Canada, where people say "I'm sorry" all the time, like constantly. It's almost this gut instinct if you even think you might have slightly inconvenienced someone. And yeah, maybe it seems like a bit much sometimes, but this collective habit creates a really powerful social vibe. The default setting is mutual respect. It builds a whole culture where being considerate isn't the exception, it's the rule. But what does this shift from it to thou look like for one person? The source shares this incredibly powerful story of one man's journey from an extreme I-it worldview to a life that's all about I-thou. So this story is about an American businessman, and in his past, he was fanatically racist. I mean, he openly treated anyone with a different skin color with total contempt. He wasn't seeing people, he was seeing objects for his own hatred. This is the I-it relationship in its absolute ugliest, most destructive form. But then, everything changed. He became a Christian, and while he was studying the Bible, he came across this one single idea that turned his entire world upside down. The idea that every single human being is created in the image of God. That one truth just completely shattered his old racist way of thinking. The moment he started seeing every single person, no matter their race, as a reflection of the divine, as a thou, all that hostility just melted away. He was transformed. And today, he lives a life dedicated to caring for and including other people. It's just an amazing example of how a fundamental change in your heart can radically change your life. And that story brings us right to the core of this whole thing. Saying I'm sorry or being respectful isn't just about the external action. For any of this to be real, for it to actually last, it has to come from somewhere deeper inside. The source really grounds this whole idea in this core teaching: love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that is the ultimate I-thou statement, isn't it? It assumes, right from the start, that your neighbor has a self that is just as worthy of love and respect as your own. As the theologian J.P. Moreland explains, the heart is where all real change begins. And when we say heart, we mean our core being, our mindset, our values, our spirit. You have to get your heart right first, before your actions can follow. The way you act is just an overflow of what's already inside. So when you put it all together, the path forward gets really clear. Building a good society isn't some big project that starts from the top down. No, it's a bottom-up revolution that starts inside every single one of us. It begins in the heart, with that decision to see the thou in everyone. And then that inner mindset gets put into practice through small, real-world actions. A sincere "I'm sorry" is one of the most powerful. These tiny little seeds of respect, when you plant them over and over again, they grow into a whole culture of consideration. So really, this whole discussion brings us to a very personal, very immediate challenge. It takes these big ideas from philosophy and theology and puts them right into our hands, right here, right now. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What's one small act of consideration you can offer someone today to really see them not as a it, but as a thou?